Hi, my name is Blonnie. I am Head of Insight at HIM and MCA. So we are an insight agency carrying out research into various markets, including wholesale. I'm currently isolating in London, where I live with my partner and my cat. We're both working in our living room, and it couldn't feel less like a real office if I tried. But like everyone, our company's had to change and adapt to new way of doing things, and like it or not, that has meant many more webinars. So a lot of what we're doing at the moment depends on giving presentations or workshops, and throughout this we've come across some really helpful hints and tips that I wanted to share with you. So I'm sure that you are already aware of most of them, but wanted to put it all in one place and just make sure that we're sharing best practice. So on that note, here is what we will cover. Firstly, a checklist for before you start hosting a virtual webinar or non-face-to-face presentation. So how to adapt content for a non-face-to-face audience. We'll cover some do's and don'ts and then cover how to keep it as professional as possible. So our top tips from our experience over the last couple of months. So first off, your checklist. Now, this is really stating the obvious, but it's so important to test your equipment beforehand. So close down any Wi-Fi greedy apps and websites and double check that your speakers and mic are working. So sound and sight are critical factors in your presentation. To improve your sound, you really can't beat a headset. I would definitely recommend investigating one, but failing that, at least a quiet room with minimal distractions. So sound quality is really, really key. I reckon you can work around a poor video connection, but clients will immediately disengage with what you're saying if they can't hear you clearly. If the connection is struggling, then try disabling all viewer videos, possibly even your own, and that should reduce the bandwidth. So keep your background as neutral as possible. You might want to use the blur effect, but don't be tempted by any of the zany, weird and wonderful effects. I'm talking about space, cartoons, beaches, very distracting. So open up all the materials that you need in advance. Make sure that you have all the documents open and no one's scrabbling and watching you look for what you need. On the other hand, close down what you don't need. This is your personal documents, email, Skype, anything that might ping up a notification that isn't intended for your audience. And then finally, prepare. So make sure you have a clear agenda and that everyone knows what expectation of participation ahead of the meeting. So otherwise, everyone will assume that they are simply viewers. If you want people to contribute more, then let them know in advance. So adapting content. So some starts, some stops. Our feedback has shown that an intro slide with a picture and some sound bites about you and your industry is really beneficial and helps them connect with you straight away, makes people more likely not to switch off. You can keep the conversational element by not just speaking at the screen. I'd say online presentations actually need to be a bit more interactive to hold people's attention than just a normal face-to-face. So you can use your mouse as a cursor to highlight areas that you want to draw people's attention to, as you can't just point like you can on a normal screen. Things to stop. I would avoid complicated PowerPoint builds. It might be laggy, might get lost if people's internet connection isn't great. Busy slides, so definitely keep it simple, keep it easy to understand and really concise. So make sure that the layout is clear so that you can look at your screen rather than looking down and reading your notes. And finally, limit unstructured questions. So make sure that people know exactly when they can and can't ask questions. So I would recommend having a blank question slide. If it's on Microsoft Teams, the raise your hand feature doesn't really work amazingly well. We haven't had good success with it. And also asking people to put questions in the comments chat kind of disrupts the flow, and when the presenter is flicking backwards and forwards, people tend to switch off. So some of our hottest tips for keeping it professional as possible and as similar to a face-to-face experience as we can. So I'd say where possible, request that cameras are on from both the clients and yourself. Just really helps with participation and asking questions. You can see if someone is lost and wanting to be more involved. So our experience is that actually lots of people do respond quite well to setting some rules of engagement such as cameras on. I would recommend keeping the sessions as interactive as possible, kind of similar to conferences. Using programs like Kahoot has gone down really well. Also platforms like Slido could be used as well. Don't be afraid of sort of workshop style rooms. You can try breakout rooms and assign people to teams. If you set their teams in advance, get them to have a separate call for 10 minutes before rejoining and sharing their key points and messages. It actually can work really, really well. Make sure to let your key contact know in advance so that they can mitigate any sort of issues that there might be. And if you're pre-recording videos, try not to speak at an unnaturally slow rate. It can be quite tempting to slow it down, like in a face-to-face presentation, but actually it can be quite annoying to listen to a presentation where a presenter is speaking unnaturally slowly. So just keep it at a normal conversational pace, and if someone's missed something you said, they can always rewind and watch it again. And finally, own that silence. So don't be afraid to let silences hang. You don't need to fill every moment of static, and just be confident in listening to the sound of your key messages and takeouts sinking in. So that is all from me. Hope that was useful. I want to pass it back to you and ask you if you or your colleagues have any helpful hints or tips for giving webinars, and any best practice that you can share with me as well. It would be great to hear, so thank you very much for listening.